Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman here, as always, with Tom or Tom. How's it going?
Well, Tony, I don't want to brag, but I just got to watch the Ohio State-Purdue game for a second time. So I'm doing pretty great. How are you, bud?
I am doing well also. I, too, had the coupon for buy two Ohio State games, get one, buy one, get two free, buy one, get two free. BOGO, if you will. And so, yes, welcome everybody to the Ohio State rewatch of the Purdue game. What did we learn? The 10 things that we learned from rewatching this. And as you guys know, Tom's watching from the field via a camera. The little Kodak, it does not provide a wide range of viewing. It's just, just a little thing there. And of course, I'm up in the press box 1,000 miles away, and you can only see so much. So we get back together and we watch it on television to see how exciting and excited Gus Johnson is. And then also, what did we learn as we see all of the stuff that we missed? And Tom, I'll start first because it seemed like this during the game, but rewatching Donovan Jackson, and he was pretty darn good as a pass blocker in this one. There was only one instance where he kind of went inside and maybe to take the tackle and the defensive end came off the edge, but it was a quick pass anyway. But other than that, I don't recall him being beaten. Certainly wasn't bullied. No speed rushes that I saw got to him. There was no Abdul Carter, we know, but he looked like a tackle out there. He did not look like a guard playing tackle. He was athletic, as we know. He was able to get out wide. He was able to get upfield. Like, he looked pretty good to me in this one. I think is a very, very positive step. I mean, he graded out as a champion last week too, so against Penn State. So I don't know that he did this time, but he certainly played like a left tackle, like you'd want your left tackle to play.
Yeah, I actually have a note in here in the second quarter on the play where Carson Hinsman got hurt that Donovan Jackson is like blocking his guy and like really drills his guy, knocks him down to the ground. That's actually what hit Carson Hinsman's leg. I couldn't tell what the injury was at the time. And I have a note. This is the first time I've noticed Donovan Jackson all game. And it's good. He's knocking someone down to the ground, but it's the first time you've really seen him. And you could say the same thing about Josh Fryer at right tackle, Tegra Shabola at right guard, Seth McLaughlin at center, Carson Hinsman at left guard. It just was it was a game where they didn't completely dominate the game by any means, but the pass pro was pretty solid throughout the game. I think that was the first sack they gave up and might have been the only sack they gave up all game long, and that was because Carson Hinsman went down with an injury and the guy Carson Hinsman was blocking, therefore did not have anyone blocking him, and then they got a sack. I think that might have been the only sack of the game, but just on the whole, man, that offensive line was just really solid. Yes, that was the only sack all game long for Purdue. So that offensive line I thought was really, really solid. And the fact that you're no longer noticing the offensive line and they're no longer showing replays of, oh boy, look at these three guys coming clean through the offensive line. That's maybe the most encouraging sign you could have seen, because you're not going to definitively prove, okay, this is a national championship winning offensive line against Purdue. You could pretty definitively prove that it's not, and they didn't prove that it's not. So there you go, Tony. The most encouraging double negative you will hear all week about the Ohio State offensive line.
Or at least discouraging.
Tony, it's too much. No, please. Don't confuse the audience.
I will say, Will Howard did say after the game that sack was on him, because he was waiting and waiting and waiting, and then finally got tackled.
Well, but that might be an indication of how the offensive line was playing, because we talk all the time about quarterbacks and the clock getting sped up in their heads when there's a lot of pressure coming, and boy, they're trying to get the ball out. There were a bunch of times. I mean, the G. Scott touchdown, Will Howard's just kind of standing back there, patting the ball. G. Scott kind of got out of his pass set a little late, and I think he was trying to block somewhere. He got hung up somewhere on that play. But Will Howard had plenty of time to just be patient and throw the ball out there. And on that one, yeah, he probably had 3.5 seconds in the pocket before he got hit. And if you're not seeing pressure, you're not looking down. You're just keeping your eyes downfield like you're supposed to. So, yeah, that's probably even more of a testament to how well the line played.
Another one for me, and this is the second time in 3 weeks we've seen this, and I didn't notice this during the game, only noticed it when they put it out on television, but Will Howard drops back and looks to get ready to unload one deep downfield to Jeremiah Smith, and they're inside the Purdue 40, so they can only throw it so far, but he kind of cocked a little and then just dumped it off to, I think, Quinshon Judkins there in the flats, and it was another one where the playing his own basically, and the corner just lets Jeremiah go to the safety. And as Ryan Day has told Will Howard and told us that he's told Will Howard, Jeremiah Smith is even with the safety. Throw it as far as you can, and it's going to be good. And so he didn't, and you see on the replay, like he would have been very, very open, and he just couldn't pull the trigger, and he's late on doing that. And you saw him late again, the Carnell Tate thing, where Tate was wide open again, downfield on a deep shot, and it was a late throw, and it hung up, and he got broken up. Tate was able to catch that a couple weeks ago for a touchdown, the 40 or the 60-yarder, and bring it in. This time it got broken up. He hits the ground, it gets broken up. You can't expect to come down with those when you shouldn't have to, basically. So I think there's still some room there, although the deep shots of Travion Henderson I thought was fantastic, where they split Henderson out wide, have him run like a little slant and go basically on a linebacker. That's not fair. That's not fair at all to do that. And then there was a perfect throw right down the sideline. But they need to get those receivers start clicking on those. It's not going to cost you against Purdue. It's not going to cost you against Northwestern, but it can. If defenses aren't going to have to pay for getting beaten, then kind of missing the point.
Right. Well, and you have that's such a cheat code to have Jeremiah Smith out there. Like, it feels like if you're not taking 2 deep shots to Jeremiah Smith a game, just throw the ball 30 plus yards down the field to Jeremiah Smith at least twice every game. Otherwise, you're just kind of wasting an opportunity, wasting one of your weapons to a certain degree. And they did take 1 deep shot to him, and then, had another opportunity, didn't pull the trigger on it. The one that was underthrown to Carnell Tate, the wind was kind of blowing in that direction, so that might have gotten hung up a little bit in the wind. But again, have we seen Will Howard overthrow guys? I mean, there was the one at Penn State with Jeremiah Smith where he looked slowed down for a second and then took off running again. And that, if he had still been running, that would not have been overthrowing Jeremiah Smith. It just feels like he hasn't overthrown anyone all season. So if you're constantly underthrowing people or making people, slow down to turn and almost fair catch the throw, yeah, it's going to work because you have really good receivers. But just, I wonder if it's as simple as just saying, just go out and intentionally try to overthrow this one by 3 yards. Try it. See, like, throw so far that you're like, you know what? There's no way he's going to catch this. And just see. Like, because if you can hit him in stride, then that throw to Jeremiah Smith, to the Carnell Tate, is a touchdown. If that throw to Jeremiah Smith is potentially a touchdown. If they have to stop and turn around and break stride, then you let the defensive backs catch up. And so you lose an opportunity for what could be an even bigger play. So, yeah, I think that might be, I'm sure that's a gross oversimplification, but also maybe try it. I don't know. I would love to see the overcorrection in the other direction, and then you sort of dial it back from there. So, boy, you touched on a bunch of them that I have here in different forms. How about, let's talk about Travion Henderson. My goodness, he is so effective in the ground game and in the pass game. And he put up good numbers on Saturday. It wasn't, he had, he had 85 yards rushing on just 6 carries, and he had 43 yards receiving on just 3 receptions. So that's 128 yards on 9 touches. This is the Travion Henderson that we were promised. And over the last few years, you've seen flashes of it, and he's had the big runs at big moments, and he's had big receptions in certain moments, but he's also been banged up a bunch. And I was all ready to give my, boy, this is why they brought in Quinshon Judkins' speech on the show. We've done this a bunch of times, but I was going to do it again. It was like, this is why you bring in Quinshon Judkins, because you keep him fresh and you keep Travion Henderson fresh. And oh boy, how much you're healthier, and they're running harder and they're blocking harder. And man, and then Joel Klatt basically did the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, well, thanks, Joel. I really appreciate it. So, this is the stuff that we've been talking about in terms of why are you not giving, they showed a graphic on the thing. Why is Quinshon Judkins at 60% of the number of carries he's had this time of year at Ole Miss the last couple of years? Well, because you don't need him to carry the ball 17, 18 times a game. He can carry it 11 times a game. Why is Travion Henderson not carrying the ball as much as he did last year or the year before that? Well, because they don't need him to. And because you don't need him to, you're keeping him healthier, and therefore he's looking better, and therefore you're going, hey, why aren't they giving him the ball more? And it's like, well, we got a little bit of a catch-22 situation here.
This was the first game over 100 yards of total offense, of all-purpose yards, all-purpose running for Travion Henderson, not including the 18-yard kickoff return, which we can get to a little bit later, but 128 yards of offense. Previous high this season was 91 against Oregon, and you're seeing him used in the passing game more the past couple of weeks. And one of my notes here is you can't give the ball enough to Travion Henderson, basically. And he's certainly well rested and is running like it and looks like it, and pairing well with Quinshon Judkins, which will take me to my next point, which is I didn't catch it at the time how much those two are playing together, I guess is what I should say. Because sometimes you have one guy split out wide, sometimes you got the other guy then in the backfield, and then you've got Travion Henderson running a jet sweep for a touchdown, or you've got Henderson blocking for Judkins. After the years and years and years of talking about 21 personnel and getting the two backs out there and the split backs and what have you, we're finally seeing it, and I think it's only going to get more effective, and it becomes more effective because of how talented Travion Henderson is as a receiver as well. Because you can run not that anybody runs no huddle anymore, but you could do that with those two guys, and you can run Henderson as a receiver if you want to find matchups for him. But those two together at the same time keeps defenses guessing. And the one thing you don't want to be doing as you're bracing, you don't want to be guessing and then, oh crap, here comes one of these dudes to run me over, because they're also running really, really hard right now, playing physical. So I like that attack by the Buckeyes right now. And it's always a matter, well, who do you take off the field? It's like, well, everybody needs a rest now and then. And if you're going to run the ball, you don't need three receivers necessarily to do it anyway.
No, and they've done, it feels like they've done a very good job of rotating guys, especially just over the last few weeks. You're seeing more rotation in the running backs. You're seeing more rotation in the wide receivers. You're seeing more rotation on defense. It just feels like that's been a little bit of a point of emphasis, and using guys smarter, using guys more creatively. And we'll get to the defense later. We're kind of on a roll with the offense. We'll get to the defense a little bit later, but you just saw so much more rotation and so much more creativity on the defense. So yeah, that feels like that's sort of been a point of emphasis for them to a certain degree. Let's see. How about remind me we need to get to the deeply cynical thing later about the tight ends, but how about Jelani Thurman? How about Jelani Thurman and his growth this season? They talk about the light coming on for guys. It feels like this is a year where the light has kind of come on for Jelani Thurman to a certain degree. He had a really nice block. Joel Klatt actually called it out on the Will Howard touchdown run. Blocking has always been kind of the effort, the physical ability to do it, the attention to detail to do it. That's been one of those things that you've sort of been waiting on with Jelani Thurman. He's always been the guy who was like, well, boy, he's big, he's athletic, he can make guys miss in space. The receiving portion of the job has never been the question with him. So to see him out there, to see him making a big block like that, but also just you're seeing him as a bigger part of the game plan. His snap numbers are going up every week. That feels like, if you ask Ryan Day about Jelani Thurman this week, you're probably going to hear the phrase, the light kind of going on. It just feels like he's another guy where there's been a little bit of a wait, and now it's like, okay, now you can see, all right, this is really about to happen.
Yeah, and it's always interesting to hear Ryan Day talk about him because there's so much depth to the things that Ryan Day is saying. And we've talked before about how he's been more critical of Jelani Thurman than almost anybody over the time that we've seen him. And that's not from a place of disgust or whatever. That's from a place of, I know this kid's potential. And if we could just get it, everybody would see why there is so much passion in terms of getting him to reach it because he can be special, and you are seeing more snaps. And he's played in every single game this year on offense, which is great, even when Will Kazmarek was out there. So I think you finally saw him this week for the first time in a month or two play more snaps than Bennett Christian. So that's positive for him, and I think it's only going to help. And I think this week will be another good one for him. But it is good to know for him to see like the results of whether it's a fourth down play a week and a half ago or this little corner route that he got for this one where they dialed it up for him, that they can call things for him. He can be relied upon, and he's seen that now for himself. So good for him, the year of the tight end, as we know. Do you want to finish with something with the tight ends before we jump over to the defense?
Sure, this will be a smooth transition from the offense to the defense because this is partly about the tight ends and partly about the Purdue secondary. So, Tony, am I the only one at this point who starts watching these games and it's a little like it's like you're browsing through the Sears catalog as a kid when it's like it came in, late September, early October, and it's like, oh man, look at these football uniforms, the old Denver Broncos football uniform or the Seattle, oh boy, they have Lincoln Logs this year or Legos. Like, oh boy, like I'm going to ask for all of this stuff for Christmas. Like you're watching this game and it's like, so this Max Clayer kid for Purdue, third in the Big Ten in receiving yards as a tight end this year, huh? Where's he from? Oh, Ohio, in Cincinnati. Wow, interesting. Okay. And so the Buckeyes are losing G. Scott after this season and would maybe look at, okay, interesting. Okay, well, I don't know, Tony. It's just I mean, I don't know why I'm bringing it up anyway. And Dylan Thieneman also on that Carnell Tate play, he was the one who broke up that long Carnell Tate play. Very promising safety there for Purdue. Ohio State maybe losing Lathan Ransom after the season. So hey, Tony, Christmas is coming. You never know what college football programs may have on their wish list this year.
So now I'm picturing like the 1980s, 90s Wheel of Fortune where you got Ryan Day like in a little corner here with his face looking at all of the things that we can buy. There's like, I'll take a Dylan Thieneman, I'll take Max Clayer, we'll put the rest out on the service merchandise gift certificate. And I wrote it on Friday, like some of the things that big Buckeye fans will be saying afterwards. One of them would be like, hey, any chance of Dylan Thieneman? Well, I will say he is a Purdue legacy, and that's been his entire life. Talking with PJ Fleck about him, or I wasn't, but I was there when he was talking about him, how he recruited Dylan Thieneman to come to Minnesota, and knowing his background, he's like, Dylan, if we recruit you, do we have a shot? And he's like, yeah, you got a shot. But you see where he ended up. He was a freshman All-American last year, leading them in tackles again this year. Pretty good player. Could be a solid backup at Ohio State.
Well, and you listen, I mean, if you can't get Thieneman, obviously everyone has their own choices to make. PJ Fleck has a freshman safety that Ohio State was recruiting as well. Coy Parrish, who's having a heck of a freshman season. So listen, Tony, the market never sleeps, Tony.
It is funny. The portal opening up is like the wish book, the Sears wish book hitting the mailbox. It's like, ooh, I'm going to circle everything that I want. While we're talking about the Ohio State defense, let's talk about Eddrick Houston, who gets his first start at 3 tech. And while there's never any like wow plays of him tearing into the backfield and dropping somebody so that everybody would notice him. I thought he was very solid in holding up the point of attack. He had a pass rush early on that pushed the quarterback out into a Zach Hudson card. He was holding up his end on short yardage against guys that are bigger than him and should be stronger than him, given that he's a freshman who's been a tackle for just a little bit. But he certainly looks tackle sized, and he's always been bigger for a defensive end. But overall, I thought this was a positive game for him, aside from the personal foul. and you saw him come out, and they showed it, I think, coming out of the half where he's talking to Cody Simon. JT Tuimoloau is coming up talking to him. The vets are, just encouraging him. And I think also part of that is just him saying, I'm good, don't worry about it, it won't happen again. And I guess if it's going to happen, better to happen here than, say, against a Michigan or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. That was a freshman mistake. And guess what? You're allowed to make one freshman mistake when you're a freshman. That's okay. That's when you're supposed to do it. Don't make a freshman mistake as a junior. Make your freshman mistake as a freshman. And he's another guy where you didn't notice him getting pushed around. This is not the greatest offensive line they're going to face all year, but for a true freshman who's probably a little undersized to be inside right now, held up really well. It seemed like you saw him at different times making a couple plays. It was not a dominant day by any means, but he did not look out of place at all in the middle of that Ohio State defensive line. You didn't look at that at any point and go, boy, they're really missing Tyleik Williams today. The interior of the defensive line held up well. And there was a bunch of Eddrick Houston and Caden McDonald and some of the younger guys like that getting reps in there, which that's what you want. That's a perfect way to use those reps in a game against Purdue where you are never in. There was not one moment in that game that you thought, oh boy, this is going to be a 4-quarter game. They're in some, any kind of danger. So that was a great way to use those reps and make them much more productive than just, here's a senior and he's going to get a bunch more snaps. They actually talked about that at one point on the broadcast. The first 5 games, all the defensive linemen had played 30-something snaps, and then the last 3 games, all the defensive linemen had played 50-something snaps. And, that's probably too many, and you have the Purdue game, and then you have the Northwestern game, and those are probably going to be the last 2 games where you're favored by 30 points this season. I haven't even looked at the line this week, but assuming they're somewhere in that range. Then you got Michigan, you got Indiana, which is going to be probably more of a 4-quarter game. You got Michigan, which is Michigan. And then after that, it's Big Ten championship game potentially, and then college football playoff. So you're playing more or less after the Northwestern game, you're probably playing top 20-ish teams every week other than Michigan, and Michigan is Michigan. So these guys, you have to be, number one, save the reps for those guys. And they did a good job of doing that on Saturday against Purdue. But number two, continue to develop those younger guys so that you're more comfortable with them being out there. And you're comfortable with Eddrick Houston taking meaningful snaps and Caden McDonald taking meaningful snaps. And we saw a bunch of Kenyatta Jackson. We saw a bunch of Caden Curry. I mean, all these guys, as they continue to develop and as they continue to grow, they're feeling more and more comfortable with those guys. And, some of those guys are 3rd-year players where they're fine with them already. But the younger guys, that feels like at some point, you're going to need 15 or 20 snaps from Eddrick Houston in a college football playoff game. So you better have him ready, and you'd better be ready to have him do that, play that kind of a role. Let's see. I guess, okay, we've waited long enough. Can we talk about the Jack Tony? Because
yes, let's do it.
It finally, after years and years and years, we finally saw it on the field. And it didn't work, but it feels like they were, they're just kind of trying stuff and mixing and matching. And it's the kind of thing that you can see that it could work in certain circumstances, situations against certain teams. You didn't need it. You absolutely did not need it against Purdue. But that felt like, all right, we're going to put this on film. We're going to throw this out there. We're going to give everyone else a little bit of something to worry about. And there probably will be teams where that will potentially, be beneficial for them. It also, you saw Mitchell Melton, you saw CJ Hicks. It allows them to put some of those guys out there in a position to succeed and to do some things that they haven't necessarily been able to do in the more base defense. And Melton has been a really good pass rusher off the edge in, kind of, obvious passing situations. They've used him off the edge a bunch. CJ Hicks, it's like, if CJ Hicks is going to have a role on this team, that's it. Like that feels like that's where he really fits. That's where he potentially really excels at what he can do. He had one where he missed the quarterback, missed Card coming clean off the edge. So you really would love to see that turn into a sack. But it feels like there's potentially something there. This is one that I'm really interested to talk to Ross Fulton about later in the week, because it feels like there's something there, but they're just kind of like just trying it out and exploring it a little bit, like just, well, let's see how this works. And then is that a club that's going to go back in the bag and never come out again? Or is that something that, okay, they're going to keep working with it and keep refining it and keep, finding ways to use it?
Yeah, it was what portion of one drive in the first half, a portion of one drive in the second half. And I thought it was, you as you were saying, like you could see it, why it could be effective. And I thought it did well the first 2 or 3 snaps. The plays just were not being made by the defenders. They were there to make the tackle. They just didn't do it. And it led to some yards. And then later on in that first drive with it, Purdue started running the ball decently well. So it was like, okay, back out of this. And then you saw it again in the second half. So I think we will continue to see it in some form or fashion, because you now know, like, okay, at some point, do you just do the same thing next week, and then what you've built off of that bring out for Michigan? Do you need to bring anything out for Michigan? Or do you just do the same thing these next few weeks? Oh, we're just trying some things out, when you're just setting this up for something more down the road. We're going to do something off of this. We're going to do something else with this type of thing. And, teams will prepare for it, but what you're kind of setting them up for them to prepare what you want them to prepare for. And then now that they know that and all of that, then you have maybe a little bit of an advantage on how to attack them. So we'll see how that one goes. Let's see. So we've got that. How about I got 2 more for you. The special teams. You get the punt block. Ryan Day talking about how they want to make this a more effective part of the team. Now we've seen Caleb Downs at punt returner. We saw Travion Henderson at kick returner. We've seen Emeka Ibuka. It seems like they're really taking this seriously, which I think is a darn good idea, as long as you've got the coaches to do it, and to remind players, hey, we're running a fake punt, or hey, we're not running a fake punt. Stuff like that. Go ahead and continue to use it, make it a part of the game. Try to be more effective with it. There's nothing that says you can't get 30 yards on a kickoff return if you want, other than blocking. And I know we always hear it's like, well, we were 1 block away. Stop being 1 block away then. I mean, do better, execute better. And if they worked hard on getting this punt block and they got it, if you work hard on busting a return, don't be surprised if you get it. It's just really hard to work on that in practice.
Yeah, that's kickoffs and that kind of stuff is very, very hard to work on in practice, because those are the plays that historically have had the highest rate of injury of any. So with as much as they're trying to avoid contact and that kind of stuff, it is something that's hard to work on in practice. It is encouraging, I think, to see them seemingly making an effort on special teams. Like it has felt for a long time like it's just, well, when we do stuff on special teams, it doesn't work because we forget to tell players that the fake punt is on or that the fake punt isn't on. And so therefore we're just not going to try. And it's like, well, I don't know that that's the lesson you need to learn there. And now it does feel like there's a little bit more effort putting in. And I don't know if that's a function of just they hadn't, fully gotten through this stuff yet, or if that's a function of you probably didn't need it that much until now, but you're going to have games coming up where you're going to need it. So you might need to put more effort into it. I don't know what exactly to chalk that up to, but I think that is probably a good sign for the team on the whole. And yeah, I mean, being 1 tackle away from returning a kickoff for a touchdown is like how I'm just 1 bar exam away from being an attorney. Like, well, that's true, but also like it's still pretty far as it turns out. So yeah, this is I think an area where that was the first time all year I feel like you've noticed the special teams for something positive with that punt block. And it was Mitchell Melton. I went back and looked. Mitchell Melton was the guy in the 48 jersey, because they talked about Mitchell Melton in the post game. Ryan Day did. And then there was a 17 out there, but the 17 was Carnell Tate. So therefore the guy in the 48 was Mitchell Melton, because he
got hurt on that too. So I don't know.
Oh, did he?
Yeah. He just kind of celebrating and saw him start limping. So he did not come back in the game after that. So I don't know what happened there.
Okay. And then, yeah, Caden Curry was the one who blocked that punt. So that was, that was really, I think that's very encouraging for Ohio State fans that, okay, there's a little bit of an effort there, and they are paying attention to it. And that was Brian Hartline, I think, was the one who was in charge of that particular. I think it was Rob Keyes and Brian Hartline in charge of that. So yeah, that's I think a very encouraging sign. And just shuffling different guys through, having Caleb Downs as a punt returner at some point, having Travion Henderson kick returner. At least at least they're trying it. It's not the Urban Meyer just fair catch the punt because the offense is going to handle all the offense will do its work. You just don't screw this up. Like, you probably are going to be heading into games where you're going to need more than don't screw this up out of the special teams. All right. And let's see, how about the defensive line on the whole? Because the defensive line on the whole was that was a really good game. There's been lots of JT Tuimoloau, is he still on the team? Jack Sawyer, is he ever what does he do? This was a game where you saw consistent pressure, you saw different pressure coming from different angles, you saw some stunts, you saw some guy. There was the one that they talked about on the broadcast where Sonny Styles was basically blocking for the guy who was coming through behind him. I mean, there was some different and creative pressures. It's all the stuff you saw from Jim Knowles at Oklahoma State that everyone went, where is this all gone? And then they have, rebooted the defense, and all of a sudden Jim Knowles is running a Jim Knowles defense, and they're getting pressure like they haven't gotten for a couple of years. And it's like, well, I think you can, I can connect the dots for you, but I will give you, the audience, credit for being smart enough to be able to connect those dots on your own. So I think a Jim Knowles defense, Jim Knowles running a Jim Knowles defense is probably a good thing. And the fact that the defensive line is now seeing more productivity and more impact in the game means, well, okay, so this probably wasn't an individual player issue. It was not, hey, these guys are terrible. They can't play. They all, put them on the side of a milk carton. Like, now they're being put in a position to succeed, and you'll never guess it. But guess what? They're succeeding.
Well, I need to see it against a good offense like Northwestern before I start to buy it. Before I start to buy in. Last thing for me, Tom. This turf is the slipping. I mean, it's better than sticking, I guess. But you see Will Howard's frustration with it. He's not the only one. And again, this is not the only place where the slipping is happening. But I do wonder what is going on behind the scenes at Ohio State. I may ask Ryan Day about it. I just like, what talks are there? Are there any talks? Is it just, it is what it is? Are you looking for solutions? I'm sure they're looking for solutions apparel wise and cleat wise. But is there anything to this? Like, what studies? You do studies about everything. Have you done studies on the slip rate of Ohio State's turf, or have you thought about doing that, or will you be doing that? And is that something that can even be done? Because your players are frustrated by it. The fans are certainly frustrated by it. I'm just wondering if the coaches, the administration, anybody else is as frustrated as the players and the people watching.
Well, Joel Klatt at one point during the game mentioned that he just kind of made this like offhand comment about, well, you remember the turf has only been there a couple of years, but the band is in there practicing, and the band doesn't practice in there during the week, but the band will do run throughs and stuff before the game, and the band, and then do their pregame show, do their halftime show. And when you're marching in like Script, Ohio, they're kind of in this like rectangle, and they're all stomping the turf down. And he talked about that potentially being something that stomps the turf down and then makes the turf more slick. That is not something I had heard before. I'm guessing he did not just pull that out of nowhere. So I would guess that was something that they probably asked about, since they have done 74 Ohio State football games this season. And they've seen all of the slips that you have seen. That probably got asked about during one of those Friday TV production meetings. And so that, I'm going to guess that's an answer that came from Ryan Day. So we'll see. It's absolutely worth asking about, because you're right. It's either the turf, which the turf is relatively new, so it shouldn't be that big of an issue. It is split film turf, which typically the issue is feet sticking in it, not feet sliding on it. So it's either the turf for the band or some other reason, or it's the cleats. There's only so many things it can be at this point. And Will Howard talked about the fact he was maybe going to change his cleats. So we'll see if that impacts anything. But yeah, it has been a consistent enough problem that it's, I would be fascinated in a study on slippage rates, because this is probably a little bit of, I don't remember what the psychological effect is, but you buy whatever, you buy a red car and then all of a sudden you see red cars everywhere. Like it just, I think that people are looking for it. So now you're seeing it, but also it does feel like it's happening more than it used to or more than it should. So yeah, that would be an interesting thing to find out about. Another interesting thing to find out about, Ryan Walters was in the same quarterback room as Joel Klatt at Colorado. What? What? That was one of those things where, like, I knew Ryan Walters had played safety in college, and it was like, sorry, he started as a quarterback and he was in the same quarterback room as Joel Klatt. You could have won a lot of money with me on off of me on a bar bet on that one. The last thing was the linebackers. I know the linebackers had times when they didn't make plays, and especially there were some missed tackles, especially in that 3-down look. But it felt like the linebackers also had a really good day. I mean, especially Cody Simon, especially Sonny Styles. Those guys really, really made their presence felt a lot through that game. And it's something we talked about a little bit on the post-game show, but there were even plays that I didn't remember or hadn't seen watching live that you saw then. It was like, man, there were just some really, really big plays, tackles. There was a play on like a 2nd and 7, and it was like, oh, that looks like a first down. And then Sonny Styles flashes over and tackles the guy for a 1-yard gain. There's just a lot of that stuff. It just, earlier in the year, it was kind of, okay, who are the linebackers going to be? It feels like, okay, you have your 2 linebackers now. Arvell Reese is playing and making an impact at times, but man, oh man, Cody Simon and Sonny Styles have really gotten to be really, really solid players for this defense.
And they're getting into the backfield more. They're being set more. And Sonny even had to play he followed the rollout and knocked the pass down. And so he was able to stay out there and be active. So yeah, I would agree. They're doing well. Cody Simon is, I'd say, playing his best ball over this last month and has become one of the more sure tacklers on the team. So I think that will do it then. If you want to go ahead and hit the thumbs up, we would appreciate that if you're watching on YouTube. If you're listening, go ahead and give us a 5-star rating and review. We always do appreciate that. And of course, you can find us at BuckeyeHuddle.com. First month, just $4.99. Sign up. Say hello to us there on the Buckeye Huddle message board, presented by Jeff Ruby's Columbus. See all of the stuff going on behind the scenes there. So we would love to see you there. Thank you all for tuning in, and we'll talk to you guys later.